There's no question being in sales is the best training for many things in your life. Dealing with rejection, putting together a pitch, being creative and finding the right lead. That to me was my favorite part because that's sort of half the battle.
Understanding that you've got to have, a lot of no's to get to the yes, and being okay with that, I think it's relevant to nearly everything.
Another example is I think athletes are great at this because they have failures all the time. They lose games, they miss shots, they make mistakes, and any great athlete, the GOATs of the world, have missed more shots than they've made.
I think maybe baseball is one of the easiest correlations when you think about the greatest hitters in baseball. In baseball now, in history, they get a hit about a third of the time. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with David Schnurman. David is an entrepreneur, author, and speaker, best known as the founder and CEO of Lawline, one of the largest online legal education companies in the US. There's a whole bunch of other interesting stuff in this bio, David, but like I said, I want to hear it from your mouth. But first, thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for taking the time out today. I appreciate you being here, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks for having me, Jason. And I appreciate the name of your show, Know Your Why, because in 2006, I started a public access TV show. It was like when YouTube first launched because I wanted to learn how to start a business. And one of the first interviews that I did was with Simon Sinek.
Oh, cool.
And it was before he was still amazing in what he is today, but it's before he went mainstream. So it was certainly one of the first things I focused on in my life.
That's awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
But let's start with your story. Tell us about your background. Tell us kind of, what got you to where you are today.
I always think of when someone asks that question. Do you ever see the Goonies?
Yes.
And it's like when I forget his name, the little chubby kid. And he's like, "Tell us your story. How are you there?" And he like starts in second grade. It's like in first grade.
That's right. Yeah, Chunk, I think was his name.
Chunk, yeah. And that's how I feel right now because there's, of course, we all at 48. There's so much to go. But what I'll say is I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My entire life, from when I was in middle school, I used to go to Staples and buy like calculators and little safes, but I wouldn't buy them. I would just put it in my shopping cart and pretend like I had a business, and then I would leave. and then I would buy Entrepreneur magazine, and I'd look at all the franchises in the back when I was in college, and that would be the dream. So when I graduated college, I thought within 1 year I'd be making $1 million and I'd be set in my life. I think 5 years later, I was on my third sales job and not making close to $1 million and having sort of a reality check. After 9/11, I ended up becoming a real estate broker. I live in New York City. It was a pretty impactful thing for me. We were right down there in it. And becoming a real estate broker was, I guess, mind-opening for me because I love studying for the real estate exam. And my dad is an attorney. Mm-hmm. And all he ever wanted me to do is be an attorney. So, of course, it was the last thing I wanted to do. But 6 years later, after many sales jobs and being fearful I'd be in sales in like my 10th job in 20 years, when I studied for this real estate exam, I said, you know what? I can see myself going to law school. And even though I'm not going to be an entrepreneur, it's okay. I wanted to have a career for the next 20 years. So I'll pause there before I continue, but that's what set me off to the path that I'm on today. And the podcast, or it wasn't even a podcast at the time, the show that I started was my goal to figure out the magic answer. I started my second year of law school, called True NYC. And I interviewed any entrepreneur I can find. And I was like, I want to find out how to build a business and then to turn that business and run it. And I actually found 5 themes from that show that I used to today. And I think I can guarantee everything that I've had, and I think maybe you can attest to this in your podcast, I can see direct connections from that podcast, that conversations that I had with different people. I hired a company to build my first website for Lawline that took us to the roof. Even moving to Barcelona, which is the book that just was released actually yesterday called 11 Suitcases in 2019. While I was building my business in midlife crisis and all that kind of stuff, I picked my family up and moved to Barcelona. That was a direct connection from an interview that I had from that podcast from somebody I met. And so there's so much to go from there, but I built Lawline which is the largest provider of online continuing legal education in the country. We have about 160,000 attorneys who've taken 10 million courses on our website over the past, since 2006, 17, 18 years. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are going to college next year, and I have a 12-year-old. And I wrote my first book in 2019 called The Fast Forward Mindset. And why did I write that book? Because I am a self-help addict. I call it a SHA. And I've gotten more return of my investment from a $15 book than any mentor. Or, I mean, look, I've had a lot of great mentors, a lot of great coaches, but in terms of the ROI from $15 to what a book has done for you, I've always been obsessed with taking what I've learned from building my business and entrepreneurship and self-help and sharing that with others. My why is to inspire and empower people to live their life to their fullest so they can live their life with no regrets. And I'm sure yours is kind of similar. That's why you have this podcast.
Yeah.
And that's when I wrote the book in 2019. And part of that was it's how to be more fearless and focused, to get out of your comfort zone and stay out longer. And one direct result of writing that book was moving my family to Barcelona 6 months later. And I'm sure we can dive into that a little bit more. And so we've been back 5 years. I thought I was going to write the book the year I came back. It takes longer than you want, but I think it's actually perfect timing for my family and the world to have this book come out now, to show people that it's never too late to make a shift in the direction of your life.
Yeah.
Even when you're in your mid 40s with 3 kids and stressed out building your own business.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of things to touch on there. I think it's interesting to me how the entrepreneur, I don't even know that, maybe sometimes people recognize it at such a young age, but I think in a lot of ways, for me, and maybe for you too, you talk about, kind of you always had that, that angle of wanting to be an entrepreneur. I don't know that I would have called it that. I don't know, that I had it well defined in my head, but similarly kind of, I'm going to do some things and figure it out, but someday I want to, be my own business, own my own business, do my own thing, kind of always in the back of your mind. I would imagine that those sales jobs at the beginning, like, although maybe you moved to a couple different jobs, I would imagine those were actually pretty impactful. I feel like, especially from the podcast, a lot of people that have had a background in sales have gone on to do quite well and will often attribute it to some of that experience. How do you look back on that time in how it impacted the rest of your career?
There's no question being in sales is the best training for many things in your life. Dealing with rejection, putting together a pitch, being creative and finding the right lead. Mm-hmm. That to me was my favorite part, because it's fine. That's sort of half the battle, because when you're going up against other people, it's finding the right people to call in the beginning. And I remember, so I was really good at finding the right leads. I was good at having a conversation like we are right now. I was good at even closing the sale. But what happened was, once I kind of closed enough sales that for me, it felt comfortable enough, I just got a little lazy. I don't know why, maybe for different reasons, but and it was also a weird time. It was the .com boom and then crash in early 2000s. But we got trained by Dale Carnegie, and he's like, okay, you got to smile when you talk. You got to look in a mirror because there's no videos like this. And so all those different skills, and it was just smiling and dialing. So rejection is false, all those different things that you apply to different lives. So yeah, if I could, I would have everybody go through 6 months sales training, any job that they have to toughen them up a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I didn't have, and when I talk to people like yourself and have had that background and have had that just impact, and maybe don't do it forever, but I really think it's a very, usable skill in many different places.
Well,
so
you're selling in everything in your life, right now, in building your veterinary business, building your construction business, electrical business, everything is sales, whether or not you're actually a salesperson or not, in life, in your family, with your kids, with your spouse, with your employees. So it's just something that we can always keep retraining. And you don't call it sales, but it's persuasion, or it's putting together a clear message to get somebody to understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Well, you said it, and I feel like a lot of people I've asked this question to, you said that, essentially the getting used to no, that understanding that you've got to have, a lot of no's to get to the yes, and being okay with that, I think is something that in life, understanding that it's okay to not, be perfect every single time and have, always have the outcome that you want. I think it's really surprisingly relevant to nearly everything. And like you said, we're always selling. I think that where people maybe get stuck is if they hear a no and they're like, well, I'm done. I give up.
I think another example is, I think athletes are great at this because they have failures all the time. They lose games, they miss shots, they make mistakes. And any great athlete, the GOATs of the world, have missed more shots than they've made, have had more, wrong things done than right things. And so when you realize that at the end of the day, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
And they once did this study. It was like they were trying to create like amazing music or amazing art or whatever. And in one group, it was, okay, you had to create 50 pieces of work. And I'm probably butchering what it was, but let's say 50 pieces of work. But each one had to be perfect. You could only had one shot for that, and you had to do the best for each one. And the other group was like, create as many as you want. Don't worry. Just go be messy, do this, and just make 100, make 200, just whatever. When they compared those who made each work perfect and those who just was like messy and did like 200 versus 50, which ones do you think end up having the better artwork?
Yeah. I mean, the repetition of the messiness, like all of that is a,
I answered it wrong though the first time. I'm like, no, of course the people who went for perfection, and it wasn't, and like that, which was pretty cool.
I would have answered that question wrong probably 5 or so years ago. But,
totally. Exactly.
But sure, my perspective has changed a lot on willingness to be wrong or fail, and I mean I love that athlete sort of comparison, because I mean if you think about, I think maybe baseball is one of the easiest correlations. When you think about the greatest hitters in baseball now in history, they get a hit about a third of the time. So 2/3 of the time they do not get hit, and it's like they're still the greatest that there is. And so I think it's just a matter of kind of understanding that you can achieve greatness without perfection. I think is,
I don't know if this statistic's still true, but it was like Babe Ruth was like the biggest strikeout, had more strikeouts than anybody else.
Oh yeah.
So
he's
there you
one
go.
of the, I mean, you're in New York. Aaron Judge, MVP last year, I think led the league in strikeouts, or was like top 3 in strikeouts, but was still considered an MVP of his team. And it's just, you
can't keep repeating that enough. Like people hear that, but they don't pay attention to that. So for sure,
it's a willingness to fail and use that failure to essentially get better. I think is ultimately what creates a successful person in the long term. So you did the sales. You started, I guess, before podcasts were really a thing. You had the show, and you talked about kind of the impact of meeting those people and getting to interview. And I've had that same experience on this podcast, is just like the amazing number of perspectives and talking to people who've had, fantastic success, but also, failures and all of that stuff, like learning what it takes to get to a place of success. What made you think to start that show? Because now it's like, oh, you should have a podcast if you're in business, because it's kind of a helpful business tool. But in 2006, that wasn't really, I think, the case.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey. from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
Well, it's funny because it started with, for my honeymoon, or for my wedding, it was 2006. It's when I got married. I got, as a gift, a camera from a friend or my parents or whatever, like, just so we can record our honeymoon.
Yeah.
Just a camcorder, like an old school camcorder. Yeah. And so that was the first thing that stood in my head. I was like, I have this camera when I came back, and I love talking to people and I love getting their answers. And I think I learned so much. And I remember just thinking, I'm like, I know these answers will be impactful for other people. And at that time in New York City, and I think maybe still at the same today, part of the deal the cable stations had with the city was they had to have 1 to 3 stations that were called public access, that anybody who was just a resident could apply for free to have their own TV show. So I was like, all right, let me just apply for a TV show so I can do this. At the same time, YouTube had just launched, so I also put it on YouTube. And that was it. I was truly seeking the magic answer, how to start a business, because I was getting fearful. Like, I was about to graduate law. I was graduating law school in a year. And then I was like, oh no, like, this is it. Like, law school's, then I'm going to be a lawyer. And so I was still searching as much as I could. And that I just started going to people's offices and wherever they were with this little camcorder, editing it on Windows Movie Maker, which was an old, terrible way to edit, but it worked. And building my own list for my friends and family, and then it built from there.
It's amazing. The old school camcorders. I mean, we've come a long way, I guess I would say, in terms of our ability to record and have these types of interviews. But like, really, I think innovative and ahead of the time in terms of doing something like that, because I don't. That wasn't a normal thing.
For sure.
And
I always think, like, if I really doubled or tripled down, I could have been a contender and a real well-known person.
You would have been
really famous.
Been competing with Joe Rogan for his
something like that,
top Spotify podcast. But I think, like, it's the trajectory kind of ties in together and makes sense. Then you go to law school. So tell me, you kind of gave us a high level what Lawline does, but tell me about the start of it and how you came up with that idea, because it's not a law practice. You're training attorneys, like, with CE. Is that
correct?
Okay.
So first thing is, I didn't come up with the idea. Actually, 6 years earlier, or 5 years, about 6, in 1999. My dad, who I mentioned was a personal injury attorney, and my mom, who worked with him, the CLE just became mandatory in New York State. So they decided that they were going to create Lawline and turn it into an online CLE business. He was a lecturer at different bar associations, and for 2 years they worked really hard to build it up and send it out there. But when the market crashed, the .com market crashed, and he was a full-time attorney, they just dissolved the company because it was just not, they spent too much money, and it wasn't, maybe they were too early, or just it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
But they still kept the website there, but nothing, it wasn't doing much. It was just there. And so when I was interviewing all these entrepreneurs, I remember thinking, well, what if I just take this camera and I interview an attorney, and I turn those interviews into courses. I then say, for the accreditation purposes, New York State, because you need to be for 3 years in business before you can get accreditation in New York. Oh, this is still Lawline that started in 1999. We're continuing, and here's more courses that we're going to accredit. And this is when I interviewed somebody on True NYC, the show, and they were a web development company. I hired them after the interview to rebuild the website, and then I started interviewing some attorneys that I knew. I turned those into courses. I was able to get accreditation right away because of we had more than 3 years. In my third year of law school, 3 days a week, I was working on Lawline. 2 days a week, I was in school, and I hired a high school intern who came into my office and helped me build it. And that was the beginning stages where I did everything. I actually just posted, because I have my own podcast called Lawyers Who Learn, where I interview thought leaders in the legal space. And one of the faculty, one of our first faculty from 20 years ago, I just posted a clip a couple of days on LinkedIn. She says, I have to tell you something. When you first interviewed me, I was thinking to myself, oh man, I really feel bad for Dave. Why can't he get a real job? Because I was, not only did I not, I was, my office, we took my dad's kitchen in his law firm and we turned that into my office.
Yeah.
Like, so people were like literally washing dishes while I was trying to do customer service calls. And I was filming the interviews in my dad's conference room. And she's like, I feel so bad for him. He's just like filming on a small little, it was the same honeymoon camera of the camera. And then she's like, then years later, I saw how it blew up. And I was like, wow, I guess David really did know what he was doing. And he actually has the dream job because he's educating attorneys and he's having impact and doing all that. And so I don't know, I just got chills when she said that. It was nice to hear.
Yeah. The recognition is great. I mean, it's easy to see it now, and say, oh, he created this successful thing, but then you get that from someone who saw it in the beginning, and give you that feedback. Like, wasn't so sure that was going to turn into something, and then it did. I think that's a great a great compliment, I would say, from her. So that's fantastic. So educate me a little bit on, I don't know, like, the requirements for CE. Like, is it state?
You don't know the requirements for lawyers and continuing legal education? What is wrong with you?
I know. I'm sorry. That's definitely a weak spot. My education.
So every state has a different set of requirements, and it's completely different. So we have become specialists in knowing what the accreditation is for every different state. Like, for example, in New York, it's 24 hours every 2 years. Mm-hmm. California is 25 hours every 3 years. Virginia is 12 hours every year, and on and on and on. But we have pretty much where you can get accredited, where we become essentially the state, and we decide if the course can be approved or not. Mm-hmm. We do get that. But we have to still go through the process to make sure the courses are up to date. And look, the laws are, as you know, are changing so much. It is mandatory. So whenever something is mandatory, there's a segment of the legal attorney population, and I get it, who just resents having to take mandatory courses. But we really pride ourselves in making content that's up to date, interesting, engaging, and helpful, especially in the world of AI. In the past 2 years, we've created an AI hub with over 100 hours of, what you need to know to be a lawyer to keep up to date with what's going on.
I figured it was going to be state specific, because that's what we have, for veterinary CE. It's the same. Your requirements are based on whatever state you live in, wherever you're licensed. But that's great that you're able to help people in all states.
Correct. Every state. Yeah. It's mandatory in 46 states. So we're in all those states.
Yeah. No, it's great.
Hopefully we'll get to 50 soon.
Yeah. You would think that maybe there's a few stragglers, but the as you were describing it, I'm thinking, I wish there was something like this in the veterinary world, because everything's online. Is that?
It's all online, correct?
Yeah. So I mean, usually we have to. There's more and more, CE webinars and things like that, but usually you have to go to a conference, you have to pay, go travel somewhere, get your hours in those, which is nice. It's not a problem, but typically I think, people have lives and it costs money to travel and all of that. And like, having the option to do at least a portion of it online would be fantastic. I think that would be
exactly. That was the goal from day one. And now a lot of companies have caught up to, like, obviously where we are at, but from day one we were just like, you don't need to go to an in-person bar association program to see 4 old white men behind a dais, like, just sort of rambling. Like, not, again, that's the worst case scenario, but you know what I mean? Like, just 4 guys talking in the back and just not engaging. We always created engaging content that was meant for online from the beginning, versus that was in-person content that was then just videotaped and put online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Having some, that is, it's great that you have that goal for it to be, entertaining, engaging. That's why so much CE is just literally, like you said, like someone almost reciting reading the phone book to you kind of thing. And it's not interesting at all. And people are doing it to check a box, not to actually have continuing education. So I think it's definitely nice to have that be have some thought into how it's structured. What do you see as the future for you and Lawline, and from a growth standpoint, or where do you plan to take it?
AI is changing the world for everybody. It's transformed education, it is transforming education. It's just in the beginning stages. Same thing with what's happening in law, and what used to take days or weeks can be done in hours, like contract review, legal research, discovery. And so we have a lot to do to keep attorneys up to date there. And even how I don't know if you've messed around with Notebook LLM through Google or whatever, the way you can take a video or a transcript and turn it into a quiz and an audio and a podcast. There's just so many different ways to consume information. Yeah. So our goal is to sort of be on the cutting edge to make sure the learning outcomes are not just checking a box that you watched a video, that you can get just-in-time learning. So we're always trying to stay up to date with that. We have a lot of subscribers in learning and what we can do there. And we've always been toying with how do we help other professionals beyond attorneys. We're already working with accountants, but professionals that don't have to necessarily be an attorney or accountant or a veterinarian, just CEOs and leaders in companies. We're working with some organizations to help provide the just-in-time learning that is needed just to be a leader today.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think that there's a lot to be learned and that should be learned as business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs, whatever. There's a lot of stuff that fits into those categories that having available courses and the ability to kind of stay on track with, said AI, things are changing quickly. I think it makes so much sense. Well, typically I ask people, what is their why? You kind of mentioned it right at the beginning, and I'm more than happy to let you expand on it. However, I also want to hear a bit about this move to Barcelona and the inspiration behind that, and kind of, you mentioned that was a sort of obviously a meaningful point in your life to take your family to Barcelona for 2 years.
Well, they're certainly connected. So first thing I notice when I look in your background, I see two really cool things. One says best dad and one says daddy. Can I ask you how old your kids are now? I don't know how many kids you have. Just be curious about that.
Yeah, my son actually
connected. So that's why.
No, my son just turned 7 a couple weeks ago, and my daughter is 4.5.
Okay, perfect. So in 2015, we had our kids. We had 3 kids, 6 years and under. Our oldest were twins, and I was about 10 years into building my business. We were what you can call a frantic family. Not only was I stuck in the routine and sort of like, I don't want to say bored, but like just sort of done in the routine of trying to grow a business. Our kids weren't going to bed at night. They weren't doing things in the morning and everything in between. And you know how the struggle is. And I reached out to a friend who recommended a book. And the book essentially took everything that you apply, mission, vision, core values, priorities to a business, and you use that to apply to your family. And that kind of blew my mind, because at that time I had spent so much of my energy in personal growth and being a better leader, but I never applied it to being a better father. So my wife and my wife wasn't into any of that, but we were struggling so much. She's like, okay, let's buy the book and do it. Yeah. And so the most impactful thing that we did, it said in the book to create a paragraph of what is unique about your family. And our 6-year-olds were old enough to participate. So we sat around the kitchen table and we all said a word that we thought was special about us. And my daughter said being healthy, eating healthy, or being healthy. My son said having a sense of humor. My wife said positivity. And I said travel. Because before we had kids, my wife and I loved to travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we hadn't at that point. And we were able to sort of put that into a paragraph, and it said all those things at the end. It is experiencing life through travel. And that was sort of the aspirational vision of who we are as a family. And just like I've learned in Think and Grow Rich and The Secret and any other thing that tells you, you put out into the world what you write down, so he'll come back to you. And so I told everybody about us wanting to experience life through travel. And I told one person who said, oh, you want to do that? You should speak to David Rich. He just moved his family to Barcelona for a year and came back, and it was transformative. I said, okay. But even like when we were talking, I'm like, don't worry, Dave, this is just a pipe dream, but I would love to hear about it. That was in 2015. We spoke for 4 years, 2 dozen times. And I would just ask so many questions. We'd go out to dinner with our wives. We'd do everything until I wrote my book in 2019, How to Be More Fearless in Your Life. And we decided, okay, well, you got to either put up or shut up or eat your own dog food. And so we started making a lot of small steps, applying for a visa, applying for school out there, looking for an apartment, like things that you can always back out of. And the biggest thing was we started telling everybody we were moving there before we actually really decided.
Yeah.
But you tell enough people you're moving, especially your parents,
yeah.
it sort of pushes you to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's how just writing something down on paper and putting it there 100% led us to moving to Barcelona. This was never, ever in the cards. I live in Brooklyn, 5 blocks from where I grew up. We're in the biggest city in the world, but I still live near where I grew up. And so this was just an opportunity to like change the pattern in our life. And that's how we end up moving to Barcelona.
I love that story. And I guess you write a book about being more fearless. Now you have to follow through and make a big move like that.
I wrote it for me. I wrote it for me first, because you write a book. I don't know if you know this, the average book sells 225 copies, and almost every single one of those are friends and family.
Yeah.
So I knew that going into it, even though I have this aspiration to sell 1 million copies, but I'm like, okay, it's got to be for what I want to change in my life.
Yeah.
Because it hopefully will help others too. And so then the second book is like, okay, let me show people how it helped me. Of course, it wasn't just from that, but that was certainly the spark that helped me move forward.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, I think if you're writing from your own experiences, something that's authentic to you, it's going to be a better book. Like I think that is then going to, draw more people in outside of friends and family. So I think it works in both aspects. You write it for you, but because it's authentic, I think typically it's going to be more popular amongst people that relate to that perspective. So it's fantastic. Tell us about the latest book. You said it just came out yesterday. Is that?
Yep. So it's called 11 Suitcases because I'll start it with the story of how we had got, when you're moving to Barcelona, in my vision, it was like champagne toasts and speeches and friends coming together. It was just this beautiful thing. And in reality, it's kids screaming. It's a messy house. And the morning we woke up, we had all our suitcases packed. We had an evening flight to go to Barcelona. And I looked at a couple of our bags, and they were duffel bags. And I'm like, these are the biggest, because they were like, our kids go to sleepaway camp. So they were what they use for sleepaway camp. I'm like, I don't know. These look huge. I don't think I've ever seen duffel bags this big at an airport. So I called Delta, and I'm like, this is the size of the bags. Are they okay? And they're like, no, sir, I'm sorry. Those are too big to take on the plane. So that day we were leaving, I ended up having to go to a Target and buying 4 new suitcases. So they were smaller.
Yeah.
And so that's how and then we had a leak in our house and a plumber coming. It was all these different things, but that's how we ended up with 11 suitcases. And so figuring out how to get 11 suitcases into, sorry, I hear myself talking now, even though I put echo cancellation on.
Weird. Here,
I'm going to put my headphones on just to see if that helps.
Okay. I don't hear an echo, but we've both got, yeah.
Let's just make sure. Can you hear me?
It's actually a little choppy now.
Let me make sure it didn't change my mic.
Oh, that's better. That's better. Maybe it was just still connecting or something.
Okay, but it sounds good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for that.
That's fine.
Yes. Okay. So where do you want me to start again?
Yeah, I mean, you were just talking, you're talking about that, the day that you got the 11 suitcases, you're basically that experience of the day you were leaving.
Packing your whole life into suitcases. We could have packed 25 suitcases. One of the lessons for me was like, you don't need as much as you think you need, but still, it was still more than we should have even brought.
Yeah.
So like that was part of it. When we arrived, the culture shock was a little bit tough. Like dinners don't start until 9 p.m. Mm-hmm. Siesta is a real thing. Yeah. And just like, the kids, they were jet lagged. So it took us a little bit of time to get, accumulated to the culture. And I honestly felt a little bit like an imposter. I started meeting people and they would be like, oh yeah, we're from Italy. We just came from living in Hong Kong, or we just came from Morocco, but next we're going there. And they're like, well, where are you from? Where have you traveled to? I was like, well, I'm from Brooklyn. I just came from Brooklyn. And I was like, okay. And we were at this event for new parents at the school. And the imposter syndrome was like sort of really high up there. And then the dean came on and gave a speech that really transformed the rest of our experience there. He said, this year, you're going to be invited to different events, trips, lunches, WhatsApp groups. You're going to invited to all these things, and you have one job. Your job is to say yes. Say yes to the experience that you don't want to do. Say yes to something you're too exhausted, but the new friends who you're going to, because the reason you're here is to do all these things. That's the magic of being here together. And I as he was saying that, I was reminding to all the times, especially in our day-to-day lives, where you say no. Somebody wants to get together. You're like, okay, maybe like in 4 months on a Saturday. And so, so that just reframed our thinking. And like, I remember like 2 days later, there was like a museum tour with other new parents. Normally I would 100% say no to that. But I was like, okay, I'm here to say yes. And on that tour, we ended up going out to lunch with another couple who became one of our best friends in Barcelona. And so like, and there was time and time again of that saying yes, that intentionality, that was really impactful for us in exploring as much as we could and traveling a lot while we were there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I don't do it perfectly, but that is I try to have that philosophy with my kids. Like kids here know so much. If there's no reason to say no, just say yes. there's not really like, can I go play in this lion's den? No, but like, can we go to the zoo today? Yeah, let's go. Like there's things that are unsafe, but yeah, we try to be a yes as much as possible. And I think that's a perfect, because if I ever moved to another country like that, which I think is a tremendously bold step, and I'm sure very scary, but like at the same time, it's that speech from the school principal is 100%. Like if you're going to do it, don't go move to another country and then just stay in your apartment. Like it doesn't make any sense.
100%. And you think at this stage in your life, when you're in your mid 40s, you're like sort of made all the friends you're going to make. You're comfortable. You've gone there. Within 3 months, I kid you not, we had close to 30 new couples who were close friends. And many of them are still our friends today because we all were there to meet new people. We all had shared core values. That's why we were there. Yeah. And so it was just a reminder, like it's never too late to like change neighborhoods, physically or metaphorically, and be associated with new people and new relationships that can help you, like-minded individuals.
Yeah, completely agree. David, this is amazing. When people hear this and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
I'm very vocal on LinkedIn. I post almost daily. So just David Schnurman. And then if you want to see more what the book's about, and you can also reach me through here, is 11suitcases.com. And you can put the number 11 or type in the word 11 suitcases, and that will take you right to the site.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that exact question. We'll get that stuff in the show notes so people can find you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Really enjoyed the conversation. These stories are entertaining, but like very inspirational. I think that I think I would end with say yes. I think that I love that that sort of concept. So thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah, and folks listening, make sure you connect with David. Check out his books, and please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get great guests. As always, thank you so much for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?